You will probably remember, some of you who are older, growing up in a time when you were not fixated on your body. There was a time in childhood when you thought your body was pretty great. Okay, it worked, it moved, it had all these things. My students have no memory of that. No memory. For them, their body has always been something to be looked at. That is a terrible, terrible loss. Imagine, just you, all of you in the room, the women, if you had never in your life ever seen an image of a woman in a magazine. Imagine how differently you would feel about your body. My assumption is you would feel very different. So think about what has been ripped away from us, that this is what surrounds us, this image of the body that none of us can aspire to. And again, the most important thing about it is that it's not only thin, it has to be hypertoned, it has to be disciplined, it has to be bolted down. There is something in our culture that fears women's appetites. Everything has to be policed and controlled and bolted down, and that includes our flesh. And remember, the big issue of all of this is that there is no shortage of products to spend your money on. If tomorrow women in the West woke up and decided they really liked their bodies, just think how many industries would go out of business. The cosmetic industry, the clothing industry, the diet industry, the gym industry, and then think of all the allied industries that support those industries. So when I say that global capitalism is dependent upon women hating themselves, I'm not exaggerating here. Right? This is what corporations do. They tie us up in knots. Because the goal of a corporation is not to take care of you or me. It is to maximize profit. And as we know, right, if they have to bring the world to the edge of economic disaster in order to maximize profit, so they will do that. Because we were on the verge of economic disaster. Hey, and let me go back a bit and talk about Karl Marx. Karl Marx, when you read Karl Marx from the 1850s, 60s, whatever, what is astounding is he knew what was going to happen today. How he knew in 1850 about commodification to this degree is an astounding thing. And what he said capitalism will creep into every nook and crevice of your life. There will be nothing left that has any integrity or creativity. They will take it all away. Today, young people are brought up in what we call an image-based culture, where the dominant form of communication is the image, no longer the printed word. Now let me say, as a culture, when we were print-based, we developed some immunization to the seduction of the eloquence of the printed word. We have no such immunization to the seduction of eloquence of the image. The image has a profound impact on you. It is everywhere, and it is powerful in its ubiquity. And the problem is that most of us are image illiterate. We might learn how to read literature, but we never learn how to decode images. And that means that those who produce the images, the corporations, because virtually every image you see today is a corporate-based image, they have very little to tell but lots to sell, as George Gerbner once put it. So we are steeped in a corporate, commodified society whose language is an image that most of us are illiterate. So I'm going through Cosmopolitan, and here's me, who studied the image for 20 years. I understand how it's airbrushed. I understand how it's not real. And I'm going through Cosmopolitan, and I'm going, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it, I want to look like that, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it. Right? Because that's what it does. It seeps in. Because let's be honest, when we put down Cosmopolitan or Vogue or Vanity Fair, how do we feel? Like we think, I feel really slim and toned today. I feel really good about myself. How do you really feel? Like a fat pig, would that be about right? Okay, that's crucial. Because the more women hate themselves, the more we build up the corporations. And what I want to argue is that the corporate globalization is built on the shoulders of Western women who loathe and hate and detest their bodies, and women in developing countries who produce for exploited wages the very products that we consume because we hate ourselves. There's a perfect synergy here, okay? Now, what happens here in terms of the way these images work is because they are everywhere, they begin to look normal. Images construct the way we think in the world. They jump off the pages and into our lives, our identities, our sexualities. And you know what? We didn't get to create these. The corporations created them. So we, as most oppressed groups, are at the mercy of one's oppressor to define who you are in the world. I doubt if somebody would have sat down with us, we would have decided that yes, thongs and shoes you can't walk in are a really good idea for us. Could you imagine men walking around in thongs and high-heel shoes? Could you imagine them dripping hot wax onto genital areas to get rid of all of their hair? Right? Absolutely not. So these are you live within the ideology of those who have got something to gain from your oppression. Now, let me ask you a question. How many of you do to yourselves what the media do? That is, you cut yourself up into bits and pieces in the mirror and decide what's nice and what's not. And let me tell you, I bet most things need work, am I right? Oh, this needs work, everything needs work. Now, what happens when you cut yourself up into bits and pieces is you lose the integrity of the wholeness of the body. That's what goes out the door. And certainly working with college students, it is astounding to me the way this has colonized their minds. The amount of time they spend at the gym, and this is not for health reasons, right? This is to look a certain way. The rampant eating disorders, which are connected to things other than just body image, okay? I mean, those are complicated, as we all know. But it is interesting that one of the pathologies that shows itself is through the body, i.e. eating disorders. Because when you think about it, the dispossessed do not have many places to make political statements. The body is often one of the few places on which the dispossessed can make a political statement. See, if you're wealthy, you've got all sorts of other ways to do it. The poorer you are, the more only the body is. Which is why when you go to gyms, it's mainly working class men who are pumping up. Because the only way they can reenact and perform masculinity is the body. Wealthy men can buy a really nice car, deck out a woman in lots of jewelry, big house. The working class guy only has the body on which to write the script of his masculinity.